Okay, we're recording again. Not exactly sure why I added this need to rethink player rect thing. It's Eclipse tells me it's not used, and I'm inclined to believe it. After the whole song and dance where we figure out what the next Y position should be, we actually set the real Y position to that next Y position. After that comes the whole collision detection algorithm for horizontal. If we're recoiling left, then we go back, and basically the speed of the player character determines how fast we recoil left or right. It's slowest for Fluttershy and Applejack, fastest for Rainbow Dash. You get the idea. If the user is pressing the left arrow key, then we go to the left, or I should say we set the next X position to going to the left. Same thing for if the player character is supposed to be going to the right because the user is pressing the right arrow key. And let's see. After we've determined this, we get the next position collision rectangle. And I believe that we start with this method actually pays attention to next X position, next Y position. I thought it did anyway. Yeah, get next X position. Okay, hopefully I can get back to where I want to be here. Update 6. Alright, yeah, right here. And I don't need this. First I get the left wall and the right wall from the static block manager, which is the tile map. Apparently I never use the block interfaces here. Anyways, let's see. I'm not exactly sure why I set the left wall to either 0 or the existing left wall if the floor block is null. I forget why I did this. Probably it's not needed. Anyways, after I check the tile map, then just like before, I check the rogue blocks, which is to say the conveyors, the moving blocks, and the blocks that aren't part of the tile map. If it's passed through, we don't really need to pay attention to it. If it doesn't intersect the player character's collision box vertically at all, then we also don't need to pay attention to it. Let's see, we check to see whether we can consider this left wall to be, the right-hand side of the given temporary block to be the new left wall. If we can, then obviously we update with left wall. Do the same thing with right wall over here. And let's see, we also check to see if the goal can function as the left wall or the right wall. If it can, then that's what we use. Then we go through the NPC blocks to see if those can function as the left wall or as the right wall. Once we have this put together, then if we found a right wall and we found a left wall, and the difference between those walls is less than the width of the NPC, then crunch, the player character has essentially been squished, and we inform the pony panel that the player died. Let's see. We also check to see whether the player character is right up against the right wall, and if they are, then essentially we decide, okay, we're trying to move into the right wall, but we cannot because the wall's blocking us, so we change the next X position based on the difference between where the player character would like to be and where they're allowed to be. And if the player, the human user, is pressing the right arrow key and we're up against the right wall, then we say, sorry, we're not really moving here. We do the same thing with the left wall here. If we want to get into the left wall, but we can't because the wall's in the way, then change the next X position, push it forward by the difference, and also if the human user is pressing the right arrow key and we can't go any further because there's a wall there, then we say is moving false. After all that song and dance, we figured out what the next exposition is really going to be, and we set the actual exposition to this. And probably I can remove this since it has my characteristic del me, which is short for delete me there. Probably that can go. Let's see. If we've got no custom characters here, then we increment the frame. Pretty much all the default playable characters have 10 frames in their walk animations, so that's what this is all about. If the custom characters are not null, that means that instead of using the default main 6 characters, we are using some custom playable characters, and the frame for those is taken care of in the draw method. After this, we have some collision detection to see if the player is touching any of the out-of-the-box enemies, and if they are, then the player character takes damage. This enemy is lightning-ing for damage. That's basically Zappo Topaz's lightning bolt drop animation there. And if it intersects the lightning's collision wreck, then we take damage. Do the same thing with custom NPCs here, if the NPC has a damaging hitbox. Not all NPCs do. We also have collision detection with the boss sprites lightning here, collision detection with hurt zones. And here we check to see if we're recoiling to the left or the right. If we are, decrement the damage recoil ticks. As soon as we hit 0, then we say that we're falling. Remove all the nudges for this tick. And this whole chunk, where I'm checking to see if the player character has been crushed, that's essentially unneeded. I was checking to see if the player character is crunched. Shoot. I don't even remember why I did this, but I guess it doesn't really matter. This whole chunk can go away. So that's essentially the update method for the player character.